Tiffany, she said I think.
Today's guest is a songwriter, and he is also the vocalist and bassist of the band Deep Blue Something, Mr. Todd Pipes. Todd, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. Now, to those who are a fan or listening to the show, they know that I'm a big fan of 90s music. So, your band, Deep Blue Something, and also the very famous song, which is Breakfast at Tiffany's, was like one of the songs that I've been listening to growing up. So having you here right now as my guest is really special. So, but enough about that. Let's start with you. Like, what's the update with Deep Blue Something and with Todd Pipes?
Well, we actually we have a brand new single that just came out a couple of weeks ago, which people seem to really be responding to. So we're enjoying that. And so there's an album that will come out, I think, in March. So we have a couple of, some singles that will come out. But the first one is out. It's called St. Morrissey. And we played it for the first time at a show the other night, and people really seem to be responding to it. So we're happy, and the band's active, and we're having a good time.
Nice. Now, it's a good thing that you mentioned the singles before creating like an EP or an album. I always have a question about that because I always ask musicians, like, why do you go with the singles or single before going an EP or an LP? And they would say that, well, if we're just starting as a new band, like no one would listen to us. So that's why we start with single or tracks. But in your case, you're a known band. You're an international band. Like, people know you. Like, Deep Blue Something is a popular band. Is that still the same reason? Like, we're going with singles instead of an album?
Well, it really comes from kind of the label, because we delivered the whole album all at one time. And then for promotion purposes, I think they see this as, you promote a single to let people know that there's new music coming, and then you do another single. And then once you kind of get everybody's interest up, well, then you release the album. Because now more than ever, if we just released an album, if it doesn't take off immediately, 2 weeks later, it's gone. It's just forgot, because there's so much music being released everywhere all the time that you just get kind of lost in the static. So I understand, why they do that, and it makes sense. Just because people's attention spans are really short. And, another problem is, if you pick the wrong single and it doesn't do that well, and you don't follow it up with another one, then the same thing can happen. I thought Van Halen's last album was absolutely an amazing album, and they picked the wrong first single. They picked literally the worst song on the album. Well, they didn't. I guarantee you it was a record company thing. Someone somewhere picked the worst single, and 2 weeks later the album was forgotten. I had friends that I've mentioned that album to, and they didn't even realize Van Halen had a new record. This is obviously before Eddie died. And I say, yeah, it's fantastic, but no one heard it because that attention span. They were still kind of working under the old model of just put an album out. Things are different now, and a lot of bands don't even do albums. They'll just do singles, single.
Now, let's talk about record label.
Okay.
As you can see, there's social media. You can just post anywhere, and then people will listen. And in my country, in the Philippines, most artists, even the big ones, would just release on their own. They won't go through a label. Maybe they would sign with a distributor, but not really like a label would take charge of the marketing or the album and all. In your case, at this day and age, is it still important to have a record label?
Yes and no. If you're really good at self-promotion, I think you could possibly get by with not having it. And I think the great thing for especially young artists is that you don't have to wait around to getting a record deal and that kind of thing. You can record something, you can find an online distributor like DistroKid or something, and it can be released to the world next week. Right, so that's fantastic. There is a point, though, that you need someone to help you promote it. We are not good, we have never been good at self-promotion. even social media and stuff, I find it to be very, very foreign. And for us as well, because our audience is global, finding ways to promote things, it's sort of beyond our capacity a little bit. I don't think it's necessary, but I think if you can partner with a label that you see eye to eye on, I think it can be really beneficial. But the record deals are very, very different. So the deal we have with Flatiron is more of a licensing thing. So we're kind of partnered together with them. It's not like it used to be in the old days where the label would own 90% of the record and the artist gets 10%. So things have changed. I think some of them are for the better. But yeah, in our case, a label is helpful just because, we've been fairly quiet for a long time too, and to let people know that we're back, and very active, you need some help,
Right. Now, I want to ask you your opinion about AI in music or artificial intelligence in music. So, I know that at this day and age, you can just make music, just by pressing one button and then that's it. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't want to sound too gloomy, but it's going to be the end of the record. It's going to be the end of music as we know it. I'm sorry that it is, but it's going to be. What people don't understand is that we're looking at the beginnings. We're still at the beginning of AI creation. But if you've even messed with any of the AI music creation, if you've just messed with it a little bit, you should be terrified. You get on there and you say, the other day, someone had told me about this, so I got on there and I was messing with it, and I said, make me a song that crosses what I had done, like Wonderwall with Taylor Swift, and it spit out a song in about 15 seconds, the full recording and everything, and I thought, yeah, this is the end. This is it. Because it's going to get better and better. Now, the thing that people forget too is that AI never gets discouraged. If I told it to combine Wonderwall with a Taylor Swift song 1,000 times until I find something that I think is good, it's not going to get frustrated. It's going to keep doing it over and over and over. And at some point, it's going to come up with something usable. Okay. This is going to continue. When you have, at some point, there's going to be a completely AI-generated artist that will never age, will never develop a drug problem, will never say stupid things on Twitter or X or what, in the social media to embarrass anyone. And when that happens, all bets are off. It's just going to be a matter of people farming and creating these artificial artists. And people just need to understand. And I'm sorry to look at it this way. I feel incredibly fortunate to be my age and have already had my success earlier. But things are different. When you think about there are lots of industries that have gone away. There used to be sculptors, for instance, people who sculpted stone, right, to make buildings and stuff. Those don't exist because we have formed concrete. There used to be people who could be employed as painters, right? They would paint lettering on buildings or windows, and there were things that you could do. And painting signage, people used to have to hand paint signage. Those jobs don't exist anymore because things came along, technology, to replace it. Sadly, technology has come along that's going to replace all of us. I mean, the necessity for drummers has gone down exponentially since the 70s with the invention of drum machines. Now you don't have to book an orchestra to play a string section. You haven't needed to do that for 30 years now. So we're getting rid of all of these various things, and I think people just underestimate what AI is going to do. So I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but it's all over.
No, I think you're right. I think the end is near to those musicians who really have the passion to really go to a studio, play with an actual guitar, play with an actual drum, because we can't stop AI. So I guess the end is near. So I'm glad that I was able to grow up, with your music, with your band.
Thank you. Me too.
So let's move on to a different topic. The focus of this show is to really know more about the artist. So I know you've been asked like a million times about this. So please give us, like a brief story or history of, your genesis, how you got into music, what inspired you, who inspired you, why rap music of all genre, and everything that you can share about
Okay.
your journey.
Well, I first got into music because of Kiss. Like lots of people of my age, for some reason, Kiss just captured our imagination. This idea of being in a band. There are lots of other bands, but for some reason, they just looked crazy. And I was very young. I think I was in second grade and on the school bus, and I heard all the older kids talking about this new band called Kiss, because all the young kids had to sit up in the front of the bus. And we could hear things. We started looking into it, and Kiss kind of started to emerge. And I knew what they looked like a long time before I heard their music. And parents were very afraid of them. My parents hated them, which made me want to listen to them more. So that was the reason that I got into music. Now, my parents were and are very, very, very musical. Like they went to college on musical scholarships. So music was always in our house, and it was very classical based. They listened to a lot of classical music and folk music, like Simon and Garfunkel, kind of singer-songwriter stuff. And a lot of that still comes through in my songwriting, that early influence of the folk singers. And I think I still write songs from a very folk-based perspective. So it's that early sort of education, subliminal education from what my parents listened to, plus the excitement of, oh, this Kiss thing, this is crazy. And then the bands that I got into after that. I was just obsessed with music from a really early age. And at some point, we had decided on that school bus in second grade that we were going to start a band, a couple of my friends and I. And I just started working towards that goal. And at some point, I scored a bass and got in a band. And then, my brother got interested in music too. And so we started various bands. And at some point, things just sort of morph and change. And then one of the bands ends up working out, And that's what got me kind of going, was the obsession of being a bass player. I never wanted to be a singer. I still don't really care that much for it. But yeah, that's kind of the beginnings of my musical adventure.
I was listening to the Nothing podcast wherein you were a guest like about a year ago. And you mentioned that, singing as a bass player and singing as a guitarist is different. Mm-hmm. So can you expound on that? So what's the difference?
Try.
Okay.
It's something about the rhythmic aspect that I find very, very different, and I don't know why, but it's also the reason that I play bass in Deep Blue Something most of the time with a pick. So playing with a pick somehow or other makes it a bit more guitar-like when I'm needing to sing. I have a really difficult time playing with my fingers and singing. I think Sting has the same issue because he plays bass with his fingers, but most of the time with the Police, he plays with a pick. Gene Simmons does the same thing. So I think there's something to it. And then you have, of course, Geddy Lee, who can magically do insanity on the bass while he's singing, and he's just like a superhuman, I suppose. But I'm just astounded at the rhythmic things he can do on the bass while he's singing. I have to kind of create my bass lines to make sure that I can sing while I'm doing it, which is why the bass lines on the songs that Toby sings are always way better because he's singing and I can just be the bass player. You're right. Whereas on my songs, I kind of simplify because as much as I hate it, I do need to focus on the singing, even though I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, it's just, there's something, it's the rhythmic aspect to it, you know. And sometimes I will occasionally create, like actually on our new single, on St. Morrissey, some of the stuff was a little bit weird because I had created the bass line before I had the words finished, and so I had to go back and go, oh, how am I going to do this? I figured it out, but it wasn't really comfortable. So, yeah, a lot of times when I'm singing, I'm holding whole notes, and then in the kind of interludes, I'll play more adventurous things, but I guess it suits the song in a way.
Yeah, it does. Let's talk about your band this time. So, still original, right? All original?
All
Nobody
original.
left?
No, well,
How?
we've had some leavings and coming back, but we're all, as of right now, we are all original. Yeah. Which,
Like, how did you guys do it?
how did we do what? Keep it together?
Kept it together, yes.
Because the band never broke up. We got in, everybody immediately got interested in doing other things. And so, especially when we started having children, we just sort of slowed down. But when we decided to kind of get back together, we just wanted to make sure it was all of us and everybody was interested. And I think probably because we did get to spend some time away, that we all appreciated it a little bit more. And I'm glad it's all of us, because you see a lot of bands out there, and there's like one guy from the original band, and it's their right to do that. It just seems a little bit weird to me sometimes.
Like, how long did it take you guys to find success as a band? Was it instant success? Like when you formed a group, you were able to sign a label, or it took you like several years?
Yeah, it took a long. Well, that was the weird thing. As soon as we started playing, we started building a great live following, like almost immediately. And we started touring, and that was the frustrating thing for us, is because we were playing all of these cities and selling out places, and we couldn't get record companies to pay any attention to us. So it took a long time to get the interest of a record label. But yeah, we felt like we had found success pretty early on, and we were perfectly happy to kind of continue just as a live band, I guess. But from that, and being able to we sold a whole bunch of records as an independent, and that sort of forced the label. Whenever they smell money, they'll come after you. So the label part took a long time. And even then, even once we got signed, it was definitely not overnight. That was a struggle getting that record out, because it didn't sound like anything else, and stations didn't know, does this fit our format, and that kind of thing. It took a while.
Did you have like your band, did you guys have any support to keep going? Even though you've been waiting for a record label or waiting for the success, like what kept you going?
Just, we enjoyed it. Yeah. We just, I mean, we were, even though we were frustrated by not having a record deal, we were playing big shows, so we were able to survive. We could have kept, going for a while. But we were having a great time. I think that year right before we got signed was actually the most fun that we had. There were some times once we were on a label that seemed a little stifling, but yeah, we were really happy in those years that we didn't have a record deal and stuff. So yeah, because we were just kind of all in it, focused.
Nice. Now, you may hate me for this one, but I really need to ask about the song "Breakfast at Tiffany's."
Okay.
Can you tell us, like everyone that's listening right now, and your future listeners or future supporters, can you tell us about the song? Because I was introduced to your band through the song.
Mm-hmm.
And, a friend of mine played the song, and I really liked it. I said, like, what's the name of the song, name of the band? And then that's how I was introduced. So I know there are so many people all over the world that, we're also introduced to your band through the song, through that song specifically. So can you tell us more about it? Is there anything else that you haven't shared to the world about that song?
Well, a lot of people don't know, and I hadn't thought about it for years. Like back in the 90s when we were touring and doing interviews, I had really forgotten the main reason that I wrote the song is that I wanted to see if I could write a hit song that didn't rhyme. That was the main reason that I wrote it. And I knew that I had to have something that would anchor the song to distract people from the fact that it didn't rhyme. And so when I thought about using Breakfast at Tiffany's, the phrase, I thought, well, this is the way I can do it, because there's something about the phrase Breakfast at Tiffany's that people like, even if they don't know the movie, even if they don't know the book, even if they don't know the fact that Tiffany is a jewelry store and not a cafe, which people are endlessly confused. Of course, now Tiffany's has a cafe all these years later.
Maybe because of the band.
No, I know it is. There was that's a whole different story. But so I thought, if I can use Breakfast at Tiffany's, I can write this song and no one will notice. And the funny thing is, no one ever did. No one ever really noticed that the song doesn't rhyme. It doesn't rhyme, and the chorus doesn't repeat sort of in a traditional Breakfast at Tiffany's over, and as a lot of songs do. And so I really felt like I got away with something, but it is weird that I didn't think about it at the time, because I thought that at some point some clever person would catch on to that fact and go, hang on, this guy wrote a hit song and no one notices that it's just prose. It's just two people talking. It doesn't rhyme. This should not work. And yet, somehow or other, it does. But that's why I wrote it,
So it wasn't based on like a personal experience, like
No,
what I read
yeah.
somewhere that,
No.
they were about to break up,
No, it was, I had, again, going back to the phrase Breakfast at Tiffany's, I literally said out loud as I was kind of working, and I said, okay, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? And then I thought, and I said, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? And so that line, right, just from me saying it to myself. And then I'm like, okay, well, if someone is saying, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's? They're asking somebody something, so there has to be a response, I think I remember the film, right? And as I recall, it just created this conversation. So I had this conversation, and I thought, these people are breaking up. And so I had to create these two characters that are looking back at their wasted time of a relationship and thinking, wow, we really got nothing out of this. We don't even really like that movie. The only thing we agree on is that we kind of liked this movie. We didn't totally like it. And then at the end, that's all they have, So like most relationships, they're a colossal waste of time. Right? That's why people are sad when a relationship ends, because you've invested this time and got nothing from it. Well, these people really got nothing from it. So I just created this little scenario based on that first line, and I said, "What about Breakfast at Tiffany's?"
Yeah.
So there's nothing. I've never watched that movie with anybody.
Did you expect? Okay, that's a fun fact. Did you expect the song to blow up? Like become a global hit?
No. I could tell when we first started playing it that people liked it, like that people responded to it. But yeah, there was no inclination, and certainly nobody in the band. I mean, come to think of it, I don't think anybody ever said, "Hey, this is a really good song." Nobody ever responds to anything. I'll write a song and I'll think, oh, they're going to really like it, and they just kind of go, and that's it. That's the whole thing, and that's how they were on this one. But I do remember when I first showed it to the band and we worked through it, it kind of came together pretty quickly. And we had a show that night, and so I asked them, should we try to play it? And somebody said, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. And that was it. That was the justification for playing it. Not, yeah, I'm so excited. This is such a great song. No, it was just like, yeah, why not? It's pretty easy. That was it. That's all I ever got out of them to this day. Well, I appreciate that. The band, I guess, whatever. But I'm glad you like it.
So I want to talk more about your process since you already talked about, how you created the song or what's the story behind it. Let's talk about the process. Like when it comes to your songwriting, how do you make a song? Do you start first with the words or do you start with the melody? Or do you do it both at the same time?
I have three kind of main ways that I write songs. One is usually I write things very passively. I'll be sitting on the couch watching a race or something, or a movie, and I'll just be sitting with a guitar, and that's kind of how I practice. I don't really focus on it, but I like to have a guitar in my hand, and I'll just play. And every once in a while, I'll kind of just go, oh, hang on, what is this? And then a chord sequence will kind of emerge, and I'll think, well, that's kind of cool. And I'll kind of play through it, and then sometimes a melody will pop in my head, and I'll very quickly grab my phone and record it so I don't forget it, Sometimes in that thing, I'll play something and sing a little melody idea, and sometimes from that I'll find a chorus too. And so, if I have an A section and a B section, I feel like I'm kind of on my way, right? And then the song kind of develops from there. So that's one way. It's sort of this accidental, I'm not paying too much attention thing. Another way, which I find really fun, is that I'll hear a new song, right? And I'm listening to the song and think, oh, this sounds really cool. And then I'll think I know where the song is going. But the artist I'm listening to will go a different direction. And I'll sit there and go, why did they do that? If they had gone from here to here, it would be so much better, right? But they went from here to here, and now they lost me. And so from that, I'll think, well, I'll write something kind of in this key or with this feel, but I'm going to take it to where I thought it was going to go. So I'll sort of reinterpret somebody else's idea to the direction I think it should have gone, and then create something completely different out of it. And I think a lot of people do that. They'll feel like hear a song and go, oh, that rhythm is really nice, but the song they wrote around it is really weak or weird. I don't get it, So I do that. That's a really fun way, because you'll end up with something really unexpected because you heard somebody else and thought it was going that direction, Or in the same way, sometimes if I hear a song, like if I have music playing in the house, and I'll hear something from another room, and I think I'm singing along with it, and then I go in the room and realize that's not at all the song that I was hearing through the wall. I've written a couple of songs that way, misunderstanding someone else's. And then the third way is I'll have a lyrical idea, and I'll think, okay, I've got this. I've got some words. I'll start with the words, the phrasing, and then kind of work backwards. So that's my three main ways. And my main thing is I try to not get stuck in any of them. But I never, think, well, I've got nothing to do today. I'm going to go write a song. I've never been successful at that. Inspiration just strikes at random places, and I just try to be ready for it, and find a way to record it so I don't forget it.
Nice. Now, here's another story that I would like to know more about. So, you said you produced the song Bodies with Drowning Pool.
Yeah,
Is that
the
correct?
original. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about it? Because I can't see you as, the Drowning Pool Bodies type of guy.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I had produced this one band, and they got a record deal. And their manager also had this other band called Drowning Pool, right? And he said, look, I really like what you did with this band, especially you helped them with some melody ideas and stuff. would you be interested in working with this? Here's some demos they've made. Now they're really heavy, and I said, no. I love heavy music. I really do. Bring them by and let me talk to them, and because I understand they're probably thinking we're going to work with the Breakfast at Tiffany's guy. What the hell is this about? But they came by the studio, and I met them, and we ended up talking a lot about ministry. And I think the fact that I was a big ministry fan sort of won them over, because they understood that I had some of the same perspective, that just because these are the songs that I write, I like lots of other types of music, and really heavy music is something I'm drawn to. And so we got together and did an EP called, I think it was Pieces of Nothing. And it had Bodies and Tear Away and a bunch of other stuff on it. And they got a big record deal because of that. And I gotta say, they were probably the most talented band I ever worked with. Like, they were truly unbelievable in the studio. Dave could sing anything I threw at him. They were willing to just try fun stuff. If we had an idea, they were like, well, we can try it. We can decide not to use it or whatever. And so the vibe in the studio was very upbeat and very focused, and they were willing to do anything, and Dave could sing anything. And they got a great record deal. I think they were getting bids for a record before we had even released that EP, just because the basis, like Tear Away had gone out to radio, and Bodies had, and so there were labels just all over them.
Yeah, really awesome.
It's really sad, that Dave died, but yeah, they were a great band to work with.
Wow, I have two connections now with you. First is the song Breakfast at Tiffany's, now the song Bodies.
Yeah.
So two more connections.
Yeah.
So let's well, thank you so much for sharing all those information with me and also with our listeners. Let's now move on to a more lighter note. Let's have a game.
Okay.
So we're actually almost done with the interview. I'm going to share my screen, and then let me know if you know everyone on the screen. Let me share it. Let me know if you know all the songs on the screen.
Yes, I know all of them.
Okay, so this is a very simple game. It's called a bracket game, wherein you pick the song that you want to proceed to the next round. So as you can see, there are 4 songs on each side.
Yes.
So let me just read everything to our listeners. So on the upper left, we have I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Next is Can't Help Falling in Love by UB40. A Whole New World by P.B. Bryson and Regina Bell. And I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men. And then the other 4 songs on the other side, we have I Don't Wanna Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor. With or Without You by U2. And then Enter Sandman by Metallica. So let's start first in the upper left. It's I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston versus Can't Help Falling in Love by UB40. Now for the you will be the one to decide. Like, I'm not included in the decision-making process. It's all you. So you tell me why you picked that song to proceed. So which of the 2 songs will proceed?
Well, I like that both of the songs are covers. I Will Always Love You is obviously a Dolly Parton song first, and Can't Help Falling in Love with You was an Elvis Presley song. I do think I am a massive UB40 fan. I stole a lot of things and ideas from their bass player, and I think it's a fantastic cover, so I would take the I Can't Help Falling in Love with You by UB40.
So we have Can't Help Falling in Love by UB40. Next is A Whole New World by P.B. Bryson and Regina Bell versus I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men.
Okay, so I know these songs. I know them. This is a genre that I am not really that familiar with. So I'll just jump into it. I guess I like the "I'll Make Love to You" by Boys to Men more, but those are, I would never, of all the songs I would have thought to see the titles of this morning, I would never have picked those. So that is the most random thing I can imagine. But there you go, Boys to Men.
I actually just look at the songs, like I just type, give me songs from 1990 to 2000, and then I just pick
Well, there
random
they are.
songs.
There they are.
So on the left side, we have Can't Help Falling in Love by UB40 versus I'll Make Love to You by Boys to Men. So let's just leave it there for now.
Okay.
Let's proceed to the other side. I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith versus Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor.
Also both covers. I think I Don't Want to Miss a Thing was written by Diane Warren. I'm not sure. That could, yeah, I think that's who wrote that, or wrote that with them. And then, of course, Nothing Compares to You is a Prince composition that he wrote for, I can't remember the band. It might have been Climax. I'm not sure who he wrote it for. But Sinead's version is amazing. So I would go Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor.
I would go with Sinead as well. Let's proceed to the next one. With or Without You by U2 versus Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Now, okay, so of all of these, this is tough because I hold U2 to such a high regard. I absolutely adore them. I was a fan of theirs from the very beginning. However, it's not my favorite song of theirs. I like it, and I like, as always, there's a lot of religious perspective in their songs, and I appreciate that, but it's not my favorite song. Enter Sandman, I really do like Metallica. I think that that's just a brilliant song. I think it's a well-written song. I think the production is amazing. Astounding riff. I just think it's wonderful. So, on this, U2, I ask your forgiveness, but I gotta go with Enter Sandman.
Thanks. So, for everyone listening, what's your favorite U2 song?
Gloria. Gloria or Electrico. The live version from Live at Red Rocks of Electrico. But Gloria, man, when that last chorus, here's the thing about that song. Gloria, usually the song goes and the chorus gets bigger. Gloria is the exact opposite. The song is really big, and then when the chorus hits, it drops down. And it's kind of an anti-chorus. So it's a really interesting song from a songwriting perspective. But then, yeah, when the big chorus hits at the end, it's wonderful.
Let's go back to the other side. UB40, Can't Help Falling in Love versus Boys to Men, the one that you do not expect, I'll Make Love to You. Which of the two songs will go to the finals?
UB40 is going to the finals. No offense to Boys to Men, but just not my thing.
Okay. Let's go to the other side.
Love to you. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, if someone, it just crossed my head. Like if a producer will, approach you, produce it for you to sing, would you do it?
To sing that song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Probably for just the challenge of making it really different. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with a band called Red House Painters, but they did a cover of Shock Me by Kiss. And it's so incredibly different. It's astonishing how different it is. And they made a wonderful song out of it. So from that perspective, just the challenge of making it a radically different song. I'd probably try to make it into a country and western song. Talk about two genres that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take that kind of neo 90s R&B and make it into a country song. I'll make love to you.
Yeah.
Do that.
Makes sense to really change the genre. I think it's fun, right? Like if you cover a song, it becomes your style, then you can try a different genre.
Yeah.
So, Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor versus Enter Sandman by Metallica.
I gotta go with Metallica, man.
So
Yeah.
for the finals, we have UB40's Can't Help Falling in Love versus Metallica's Enter Sandman. Before you give the answer, can you give us the reasons why you would go with this song as the winner?
The main thing is I have to go with it too. I like original songs more than I like covers. More than anything else, I think both of them are great songs. And again, both of them, amazing production on both of the songs. But I got to go with Enter Sandman.
Okay.
Which is
There goes
crazy.
our winner.
Anybody who knows me, they know what a big fan of UB40 I really am. And I love, talk about being great at doing interesting covers. They really are great at that, but their original music is astonishing as well. But I got to go with Metallica, man. Got to.
Thanks for playing that. Thanks for playing the game,
Of
bracket
course.
game, and congratulations to Metallica. You're gonna bring home that yellow crown.
I'm sure they're going to be really happy about this today.
Yeah,
They're gonna,
I'm
they're
gonna
gonna hear
tag
about
them. I'm
this.
gonna tag them definitely.
All right.
So we're actually done with the interview. Is there anything else you would like to share with your supporters? Now
well,
that your band is back, anything you want to share?
yeah, I would say just give the new single a listen, St. Morrissey, and because we would love the opportunity to come back over there and play some shows. I would absolutely love it. I know the guys would too. So the only way we can do that is if we have a lot of support. So listen, give the new single a chance, and watch out for the new record. I think people would like it. We really made here's the interesting thing. We made a decision to not make the record sound modern. We wanted the record to sound like it had been recorded in 1992. Like it is intentionally very 90s. We didn't want to change who we are to try to catch a modern audience. So if you like 90s stuff, you'll appreciate it.
Nice, thanks.